guys, welcome back. I know it's been a little while since my last one. I'm going to try and have a schedule where it's going to be every Wednesday and Friday, since Wednesdays I don't have to work till later and Fridays are my day off. So I'm really going to try and do that. But I hope you guys have liked the videos so far, the YouTube shorts, which I've noticed are just easier to make whenever I'm out and about, and people tend to really like some of that stuff, so I'll definitely keep up on that. Other than that, let's get back into our book here. Unemployed councils were formed all over the country. They were described by Charles R. Walker, writing in the Forum in 1932. These are usually journal entries or newspaper companies or just articles they create on their own. I find it is no secret that communists organized unemployed councils, and most cities and usually led them. But the councils are organized democratically, and the majority rules. In one I visited at Lincoln Park, Michigan. There were 300 members, of which 11 were communist. The council had a right wing, a left wing, and a center. The chairman of the council was also the local commander of the American Legion in Chicago. There are 45 branches of the Unemployment Council, with a total of 22,000 members. The council's weapon is democratic force of numbers, and their function is to prevent evictions of the destitute, meaning the poor, those who are, you know, about to be evicted. That's what it means by destitute. Or if evicted, to bring pressure to bear on the Relief Commission to find a new home. If unemployed workers had his gas or his water turned off because he can't pay for it, you see the proper authorities to see that the unemployed who are shoeless and clothless get both. To eliminate through public publicity and pressure discriminations between Negroes and white persons, or against the foreign born in matters of relief, to march people down to relief headquarters and demand they be fed and clothed. Finally, to provide a legal defense for unemployed arrested for joining parades, hunger marches, or attending union meetings. People organized to help themselves, since businesses and governments were not helping them in 1931 and in 32. In Seattle, the Fishermen's Union caught fish and exchanged it with people who picked fruit and vegetables, and those who cut wood exchanged that. There were 22 locals, each with a commissary where food and firewood were exchanged for other goods and services. Barbers, seamstresses, and doctors gave up their skills in return for other things. By then, in 1932, there were 330 self-help organizations in 37 states, with over 300,000 members. Early 1933, they seem to have collapsed. They attempted a job too big and in the economy that was more and more in shambles. Perhaps the most remarkable example of self-help took place in the coal district of Pennsylvania, where teams of unemployed miners dug small mines on company property, mined coal, trucked it into cities, and sold it below the commercial rate. Of 1934, 5 million tons of this bootleg coal were produced by 20,000 men using 4,000 vehicles. When attempts were made to prosecute, the local juries would not convict. Local jailers would not imprison. These were simple actions taken out of practical need, but they had revolutionary possibilities. Paul Maddock, a Marxist writer, commented, all that it is really necessary for the workers to do in order to end their miseries is to perform such simple things as to take from where there is, without regard to established property principles or social philosophies, and to start to produce for themselves. Done on the broad social scale, it will lead to lasting results. On a local, isolated plane, it will be defeated. The bootleg miners have shown in a rather clear and impressive way that the so much bewailed absence of a socialist ideology on the part of the workers really does not prevent workers from acting quite and act capitalistically, quite in accordance with their own needs, breaking through the confines of private property in order to live up to their own necessities. The miners' action is, at the same time, a manifestation of the most important part of class consciousness, namely that the problems of the workers can be solved only by themselves. See, in this time period, the Great Depression and a little bit afterwards, workers, even the poor, homeless, whatever, they all realized, hey, we can make a difference by doing what? Taking charge and doing it all on our own. The government will help us, business won't help us, rich people won't help us. So now we have to take responsibilities into our own hands and solve the problems by ourselves. Community, collective community, and self-reliance was a very big thing back then, even now today too. Were the New Dealers, Roosevelt and his advisors, the businessmen who supported him, also class conscious? Did they understand that measures must be quickly taken in 1933 and 34 to give jobs, food baskets, relief, and to wipe out the idea that, quote, the problems of the workers can only be solved by themselves? Perhaps, like the workers' class consciousness, it was a set of actions arising not from health theory, but from instinctive, practical necessity. Remember that. Perhaps it was such a consciousness that led to the Wagner-Connery Bill, introduced in Congress in early 1934 to regulate labor disputes. The bill provided elections for union representatives, a board to settle problems and handle grievances. This is how the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, came about. Was this not exactly the kind of legislation to do away with that idea? That, quote, the problems of the workers can only be solved by themselves? Big business thought it was too helpful in labor and opposed it. Go figure. Roosevelt was cold to it, but in the year 1934, a series of labor outbursts, suggested the need for legislative action. 1.5 million workers in different industries went on strike in 1934, that spring and summer, longshoremen on the West Coast, and a rank and file insurrection against their own union leadership, as well as against the shippers, held a convention demanding the abolition of the shape-up, a kind of early morning slave market where work gangs were chosen for the day and went on strike. 2,000 miles of Pacific coastline were quickly tied up. The Teamsters cooperated, refusing to truck cargo to the piers, and maritime workers joined the strike. When the police moved in to open the piers, the strike resisted en masse, and 2 people were killed by police gunfire. A mass funeral procession for the strikers brought together tens of thousands of supporters. And then a general strike was called in San Francisco. 130,000 workers out. The city immobilized. 500 special police were sworn in, and 4,500 guardsmen assembled, with infantry, machine gun, tank, and artillery units. The Los Angeles Times wrote, the situation in San Francisco is not correctly described by the phrase, quote, general strike. What it is actually written in progress. There's an insurrection, a communist-inspired and led revolt against organized government. There's but one thing to be done. Put down the revolt with any force necessary. The pressure became too strong. There were the troops. There was the AFL, the Association for the American Federal League or something like that, I can't remember. Pushing to end the strike, the longshoremen accepted a compromise settlement, but they had shown the potential of a strike. That same summer of 1934, a strike of Teamsters in Minneapolis was supported by other working people, and soon nothing was moving in the city except milk, ice, and coal trucks given exemptions by the strikers. Farmers drove their products into town and sold them directly to people in the city. The police attacked and 2 strikers were killed. 50,000 people attended en masse a funeral. There was an enormous protest meeting and a march on City Hall. After a month, the employers gave in to the Teamsters' demands, which shows that, hey, if the workers rise up, the corporations get scared and they bend the knee and give us what we want. That is the goal even today. In the fall of the same year, 1934, came the largest strike of all time, 325,000. Textile workers in the South, they left the mills and set up in flying squadrons and trucks and autos to move through the strike areas, picketing, battling guards, and entering the mills. Unbolting machinery. Here, too, as in the other cases, the strikers' impetus came from the rank and file, against a reluctant Union leadership at the top. The New York Times said, quote, "The grave danger of the situation is that it will get completely out of the hands of the leaders." Again, the machinery of the state was set in motion. Deputies and armed strikebreakers in South Carolina fired on pickets, killing 7, wounding 20 others. By the strike was spread to New England and Lowell, Massachusetts. 2,500 textile workers rioted, and Salesville, Rhode Island. A crowd of 5,000 people defied the state troopers, who were armed with machine guns, shut down the textile mill in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. 2,000 people, aroused because someone had been shot and killed by the National Guard, stormed through the town and closed the mill. By September 18th, 421,000 textile workers were on strike throughout the country. There were mass arrests, organizers were beaten, and the death toll rose to 13. Roosevelt now stepped up in and set up a board of mediation, and the Union called off the strike. In the rural South, too, organized it took place, often stimulated by communists, but nourished by the grievances of poor whites and blacks who were tenant farmers or farm laborers. Always in economic difficulty, but hit even hard by the Depression. The South Tenant Farmers Union started in Arkansas, with black and white sharecroppers, and spread to other areas. Roosevelt's AAA was not helping the poorest of farmers. In fact, by encouraging farmers to plant less, it forced tenants and sharecroppers to leave the land. By 1935, get these stats, 6.8 million farmers, 2.8 million were tenants. The average income of a sharecropper was $312 per year. Farm laborers moving from farm to farm, area to area, no land of their own in 1933 were earning $300 a year. Black farmers were the worst off. Some were attracted to the strangers who began appearing in their area during the Depression, suggesting they organize. Nate Shaw recalls in Theodore Rosegarten's remarkable interview, All God's Dangers. And during the pressure years, a union began to operate in this country. Called it the Sharecroppers Union. That was a nice name, I thought. And I call it. It was something unusual. And I heard about it being an organization for the poor class of people. That's just what I wanted to get into. I wanted to know the secrets of it enough that I could become in the knowledge of it. May Sloan, white man, said, quote, "You stay out of it. These niggas running around here carrying on some common meeting. You better stay out of it," end quote. I said to myself, quote, "You a fool if you think you can keep me from joining," end quote. I went right on and joined it just as quick as the next meeting came. And he had just done that thing to push me into it, give me orders not to join. The teachers of this organization began to drive through this country. They couldn't let what they was doing be known. One of them was a colored fella. I just remember his name, but he had a whole lot of time holding me with us. That was part of his job. Had the meetings at our houses or anywhere, we could keep a look and a watch out that nobody was coming on us. Small meetings, sometimes there'd be a dozen. Niggas were scared. Niggas were scared. That's to tell them the truth. Nate Shaw told of what happened when a black farmer who hadn't paid his debts was about to be dispossessed. The deputy said, quote, "I'm going to take all old Virgil Jones got this morning. I begged him not to do it. Quote, you'll dispose us of him being able to feed his family." Cruelty. Nate Shaw then told the deputy he was not going to allow it. The deputy came back with more men, and one of them shot and wounded Shaw, who then got his gun and fired back. He was arrested in late 1932 and served 12 years in an Alabama prison. His story is a tiny piece of the great unrecorded drama of the Southern poor in those years of the Sharecroppers Union. Years after his release from prison, Nate Shaw spoke his mind on color and class. Oh, it's plain as your hand. The poor white man and the poor black man is sitting in the same metal saddle today. Big dudes done branch 'em off that way. The control of a man, the control of power, is in the hands of the rich man. That class is standing together, and the poor white man is out there on the colored list. I've got that. Ways and actions, a heap of time speaks louder than words. Jose Hudson, a black man from rural Georgia, at the age of 10, a plow hand, later non worker in Bellingham, was aroused by the case of the Scottsboro Boys in 1931. 9 black youths accused of raping 2 white girls and convicted on flimsy evidence by all watchers. That year, he joined the Communist Party. In 1932 and 33, he organized unemployed blacks in Birmingham. He recalls, deep in the winter of 1932, we party members organized an unemployment mass meeting to be held on the old courthouse steps on 3rd Avenue, North Birmingham. It was about 7,000 more people turned out, Negroes and whites. In 1932, 33, we began to organize these unemployment black communities in the various communities of Birmingham. If someone get out of the blue, we wouldn't go out and just say, that's too bad. We make it our business to see this person, and if the person was willing, we'd work with them. Black communities would meet every week, had a regular meeting. We'd talk about the welfare question, what was happening. We read the Daily Worker and the Southern Worker to see what's going on about unemployment relief, what the police doing, what the people doing in Cleveland, struggles from Chicago. We talk about the latest developments in the Scottsboro case. We keep up. We was on top. So people always wanted some cause. We had something different to tell them every time. In 1934 and 35, hundreds of thousands of workers left out of the tightly controlled, exclusive unions of the American Federation of Work and Labor began organizing in the area and the new mass production industries auto, rubber, and packing house. A quick pause. What they mean by auto? During this time period, automation was huge across the country until roughly the 80s. You had like Ford, Chevy, Dodge, whatever. Those auto companies were everywhere back then. They also bring up rubber. Well, Pittsburgh is known as the rubber industry of the country back then. Like the rubber tires and rubber for buildings, rubber for whatever it is. That's where it came from. Now, packing house is talking about meat lockers, stuff like that. The AFL could not ignore them. It set up a committee for industrial organizations to organize these workers. Side of craft lines of industry, all workers in a plant belonging to one union. This committee, headed by John Lewis, then broke away and became the CIO, the Congress of Industrial Organizations. It was rank-and-file strikes and insurgencies that pushed the union leadership, AFL and CIO, into action. Jeremy Brecher tells us during his book, Strike, a new kind of tactic began among rubber workers in Akron, Ohio, not too far from where I'm from. In the early 30s, the sit-down strike, the workers stayed in the plant instead of walking out, and then this had clear advantages. They were directly blocking the use of strikebreakers. They did not have to act through union officials, but were in direct control of the situation themselves. They didn't have to walk outside in the cold and rain, but had shelter. They were not isolated, as in their work. Were on the picket line. There were thousands under one roof, free to talk to one another, from a community of struggle. Louis Ademic, a labor writer, describes one of the early sit-downs. Sitting by their machines, cauldrons, boilers, and workbenches. They talked. Some realized for the first time how important they were in the process of rubber production. 12 men had practically stopped the works. Superintendents, foremen, and straw bosses were dashing out. In less than an hour, the dispute was settled, full victory for the men. And that's exactly what we're talking about. There's so much that people don't know about labor history. And that's why I think books like these are so important. You may think, why are these people striking, or why are people complaining about this job, or I don't understand why globalization is a big factor, or who knew what these companies' history was like. With this book, you get the full picture. You really do get the full picture. I mean, it's just amazing to see so much history that people today just don't know. And it's quite interesting. I mean, look, you have Howard, Zinn, A, Peoples, History of the United States. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, with it being 700 pages long, you would think you just see all this work you have to read through. That's why this book might take a little while. But truthfully, this is probably one of the best books I've read so far. Yes, of course, a lot of history books and politics books are dry, maybe a little boring, redundant, repetitive. But this is a fascinating read. Um, I will have more books coming when this is done. You know, a book, another book about kind of how the mass media works and the way it's structured and how it affects society. So I'm looking at a book about that. I want to get another book on Latin America. Probably legal thriller sometime around there too. And also plan on things like that. But I'm also completely open to reading other books, such like fantasy books or books about video games or movies. If you guys would like to have me read one of those, please let me know in the description box below, and I'll take a look at it. I think that'd be a lot of fun to do. Maybe put different voices and accents on for the characters, like I do in this book, and kind of have fun with it. Kind of be very creative with the channel with reading and voice acting type of thing, and kind of go from there. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed and have a great rest of your day.